Hello and welcome to the AVRUM ROSENSWEIG show.
Welcome to one of the internet's best podcasts, where we dive deep into the lives of the extraordinary and fascinating people who leave an indelible mark on our world. Join us as we explore their captivating stories, remarkable achievements, and unique perspectives that shape history and inspire generations. Get ready to embark on a journey through the lives of inspiring people unlike any other.
Hi, folks, and welcome to the show. My name is AVRUM ROSENSWEIG, and I'm delighted to be here with you. Thank you so much for joining us and for watching and for listening. You know, I like to give a little bit of a synopsis before the actual interview and the introduction of my guest, and that is sort of to motivate you to take something important out of our words, out of our discussion. And I think that today's interview with Caroline Topperman, hello, Caroline.
Hello.
Is all about change, and it's all about having the courage and the bravery to make adjustments to your life. And in some cases, that means moving away from where you were born, your Ur of Chaldees, if you will, like Abraham, to an entirely different environment, to a new country. Today, you're going to find from Caroline that her life has been all about that. It's been about change. It's been about the idea of, you know what? I can pack up my house in a few days and be somewhere else. And that's exciting. It has its trials and tribulations, but it is exciting. So if you're sort of stuck in your place, and I often think that I am in terms of my geography, listen closely, because you'll learn a lot about the steps and processes of moving, of adjusting, of changing your life, and how to go about it. So once again, Caroline, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
So I'm going to welcome you in Polish, and tell me what you think, all right? Because you're fluent in Polish, right?
I am.
Milo ci poznać, Caroline Topperman. Yeah, am I good so far?
Not bad, not bad.
Bardzo dziękuję za bisi gościem mom programi. Sounds like Chinese the way I do it. Doesn't it? Gratulacje za okaci tworzysz poesi. Do you have any idea what I just said?
I think you welcome me to your program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. Right. It's nice to meet you, Caroline Topperman. Thank you so much for being a guest on my show. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
Kind of. Loosely, right?
There's just a lot of like sounds in Polish that are hard to grasp, of sort of where your tongue sits in your mouth while you're saying them, and that's
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt confident with the Milo ci poznać.
Poznać.
Poznać. All righty. But It did sound like Chinese, I know.
Not that I don't have an accent in Polish, because trust me, when I was there, that was the main topic of conversation half the time when we were sitting at dinner with people, of, do I have an accent? Don't I have an accent? How bad is my accent? How good is my accent? So
when I was in Israel, this was way back in 1978, the first time I was in yeshiva, and I was in Jewish Talmud school, and I was intent upon learning Hebrew. No matter what, there's been a few things in my life like that, like nothing's going to stop me.
Yeah.
And people would make such fun of me.
Right.
Oh yeah. They make fun of my Canadian accent. They make fun of the way I butchered words. And there were times where I actually took one word and I replaced it with another. I think I was talking to somebody about being on the border, and instead I said being on your bra. The words are very close.
That's appropriate.
And that's highly appropriate. Yeah. Anyways, let me formally introduce you so that my guests, my viewers have a sense of who you are. So today my guest is Caroline Topperman. She moved to Poland a few years ago and wrote a book, which is a fantastic book, and it is called Your Roots Cast a Shadow: One Family's Search Across History for Belonging. Caroline said, what started as an adventure quickly led me down a rabbit hole into my family's past. I found myself piecing together a narrative from old letters and an unpublished manuscript by my grandfather, which I had to translate from Polish. She continued to state that her book ties into her mixed Jewish and Catholic heritage and weaves together these huge historical moments. An example of that is how her Jewish grandfather literally ran from the Nazis one step ahead of them in WW2, as well as the heartbreaking reality of family members who were erased during the Holocaust. The book also includes stories about Caroline's Catholic grandmother, who was the first woman allowed to buy groceries in an Afghan market while her husband was building the highway from Kabul to Jalalabad. The book is a look at how these two very different, powerful legacies shaped not just her family identity, but her own. Would that be accurate?
Sure. It always sounds so exciting when I hear it read.
It must. Well, how do you feel about writing a book?
I think I always knew I was going to do it, so it's pretty exciting that I was able to do it, but it was a lot of work.
It's a hell of a lot of work. I have a writers club, which I've spoken about here in my podcast, and they're very seasoned writers. One person has literally had 8 or 9 books published, another 5 or 6, and some of them spend like 8 years on a novel.
Yeah,
How long
definitely.
did you spend?
So this book, this is like the second version of it. The first version was very different,
Yeah.
and it was just a very different feel to it. It was a lot. Not that this book is heavy, but that other one was a lot more. It was a lot more lighthearted. It was just very different. And I started getting. I actually got responses from agents, and everybody's sort of was skewing to focus more on the family story. And so I scrapped that one and restarted. And so this new one was about 2 years of writing, but there were probably like 3 years before that of the other book. So it was just collecting the stories and the translations to fill out this book.
One of the members of my writers club said that he was very grateful that I had started it because he spends a lot of time in isolation.
Yeah.
And when you're a writer, it's really quiet, isn't it?
Yeah.
Except in your head.
Yeah. There's a lot. Yeah, there's a lot going on in my head. Yeah, no, because you can't sit with people while you're writing, really.
Right.
I mean, you can, but you have to sort of figure the things out on your own. So, but I actually found a mentor to help me through part of this book because there was an avalanche of information. There was a lot of information and no information. Where I needed it, there was none, but where I didn't need it, there was almost too much. And so that helped me a lot, was just to have someone who was just on the side, kind of quietly guiding me and helping me out when I was freaking out. That was
Do you have an angel on your shoulder as well?
probably a mentor.
You know, Caroline, what really fascinated me about your motivation was you said that you love people's stories. And nothing greater for you than to stop and talk to somebody, as you did in Poland, a lot about their lives, or they would come over to you because they heard you speaking English and ask you about your life. I'm like that too. I really am fascinated by my background and other people's as well. What is it about learning about our history that is important to us? Why do we do that?
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it grounds you, and you find out. I think you really find out who you are by your history. And obviously, I can make changes, and I don't agree with everything everybody's done. But it kind of gave me this, like, a starting off point for who I am, and maybe why I have certain motivations and why I make certain decisions based on these things that I didn't necessarily even know, but I think somehow they get rooted inside of us as we grow up, even if we don't know all of it. And it could be something like, I grew up with one set of grandparents and another set of grandparents that didn't really want to know me. And so that made a mark, whether it was conscious or unconscious, it made a mark. And then finding out, where I was from. I went to Poland for the first time because my mother had just died, and my father was like, I want you both, so my sister and me, to see where you are from. And there was a connection to this place we didn't grow up with, we didn't know.
And it was phenomenal. You said that you went there after your mom passed in 1995. She should rest in peace. And you met your whole slew of your father's family whom you have never met before. Why didn't your grandparents want to know you?
I mean, I just say it that way. I don't know, but they didn't want to. They didn't talk about my dad. My dad when he didn't return to Poland in 69, after that, his name wasn't spoken at home. They didn't talk about him. They didn't want anything to do with him. And then his father died in 78, and he died without ever having talked to his son again, my dad.
Why?
Pride. I think it was pride. I think it was, I don't know. But I think it was
pride that what? Do you know?
So I would say, so what the situation around that was, it's 1968. Jews are leaving Poland again because of the government. My maternal grandfather is kicked out of the government. The family's trying to flee. My mother and my father meet in Baghdad. My mother, like, they were married already at the time, and my dad's father wanted him to come back to Poland. Had they come back to Poland, my mother's passports, both of them, probably their passports would have been taken away. They would have been either stuck. My mother, good chance she would have been arrested. And my dad chose not to come back. And because of that, his father was fired, and the Communist Party turned on him. And so I think it was just a combination of these things. He was angry because of that. He blamed my dad, probably wrongly, for that. And then there was a pride that was just pulled into that, of like, how could my dad scar the family in this way?
How was your dad after that?
I mean, my dad was an extremely loyal person, and he never spoke badly about his family. And even sort of in the last few years where I started to push a little bit and, talk about that, I think he defended his family, sort of. He was sad, it hurt him, but we never grew up hating his family. We just grew up not really knowing his family.
It's an interesting thing that people who are pushed out of their family, like a little bird from the nest, that the response can often be a protective one regardless. I went through a lot of, trials and tribulations with my family when I was younger, because my father was an Orthodox rabbi and I gave up Orthodoxy. It wasn't good. And we didn't talk very much for many years, and he passed away. But I was defensive of him, and I was defensive of my family. In other words, I can think badly about them, but don't you talk about them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it was like that. And my father and his brother, it took a good few years, but they finally reconciled. And I think it was, my father was the youngest of the family too. And I think it was like his moment when his brother admitted that they were wrong, that the family was wrong.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's kind of out of character with the Polish personality, isn't it? Is that
I guess, but the thing to remember is that my family is Polish, both sides Polish.
Yeah.
But because of how they lived and where they lived, there were a lot of other cultures thrown in right from the start. Like because my dad and his brother, they spent sort of their early formative years in Afghanistan. They spoke Farsi was their first language. When they came back to Poland, people made fun of them. And so, and just because of that, and because of the travels, and my dad's father, so my grandfather, he worked in the East quite a bit. He worked for eCafe, which is the predecessor to the United Nations, and they were building roads and communication. And they spent a lot of time traveling through like Indonesia and all these places that are very different culturally to Poland. And so I never grew up in this like really Polish household when I compare it to my husband and how he grew up and they were just from Poland, in Poland. We always had these other influences growing up.
Yeah. And that's really reflective in you see it in your book, and you see it through you and your kind of movement throughout the world. You're like, the board game Risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like all over the board, which is really exciting. So I want what I'm curious about is, on one hand, you have the Jewish side, And then on the other hand, you have the Catholic side. Your grandmother was living in Afghanistan with her husband, your grandfather, and she was a gutsy person. And she went into the marketplace and they hurled vegetables at her, probably tomatoes. Those are good things to throw. And say, you get out of here, woman, and whatever their language was. But she persevered. So do you see yourself as Catholic and or Jewish, both? And how do you see yourself through your, let's say, your grandmother's more specifically?
So I don't my dad never adopted Catholicism. I think he was baptized, and I think that's about where it left.
Yeah.
He, as he put it, he just was not into the being part of this organization at all. Although interesting, this is like a little extra tidbit. When I was living in Poland, the church that he was baptized in, we could see it from our window, which was kind of cool. When he came over, he was like, "Oh, there, that's where I was."
That's what you call beshert in Hebrew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that means it's meant to be.
Yeah,
Right? Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
But he sort of adopted culturally, I guess, Judaism. I mean, we did have a Christmas tree. That was the one thing that stayed. And we had a Polish babysitter growing up, so we did paint eggs around Easter, but that was sort of it. But we did celebrate Passover, for example, and we always had we always celebrated Hanukkah and all of this. And my dad, till for the rest of his life, kept the menorah I made in kindergarten. And I went to a Hebrew kindergarten in Toronto. So it was, my dad sort of adopted that and went with my mom. So we never really had this Catholic, what I would say Catholic influence at home. It would be Polish, if anything, but not Catholic specifically. So I don't have any connection to that. I could, but
Are you a Jew?
I would, yes, like I always have been. That's how I would identify. And
then moving to part B of the question, you said in one of your interviews that despite the fact that you barely knew your grandmother, the Catholic grandmother, you wanted her to be proud of you. So these women in your history represented not only strength and courage, but also who you are. How does that formula work?
Yeah, so basically, I mean, and also because they were communists and communism doesn't do religion, I think that sort of cancels out a lot of things.
Yeah.
And with them, so that grandmother, I mean, she was kind of an amazing woman. I met her once for an hour maybe, but she was tough and she didn't take no for an answer. And she was one of these people that she was a really good just like she was in physical education. I don't know if she taught in Poland or not, but she played tennis with trained with some of the Olympic tennis players. And so she was at this level, and she was a diver. And then when she showed up in Afghanistan and suddenly they're stuck there, and she's like, no, I'm going to go shop for my family. This is what I do. I don't want somebody else going for me.
Yes.
And so she did that. And then the other part of that story is that she taught the gym to girls at school, and she realized that there was no way that they could do gym class completely covered, so she convinced the authorities to let them wear shorts to gym class. So I hope I would follow in those footsteps. I hope that if she knew me now, she would be happy with what I've done and proud of that, and in that way I admire those things. And, her and my dad did reconcile before she died too. We should say that.
Yeah. There's a lot of shit happens in families, isn't there?
Yeah.
It's endless, right? I asked you a question before about the effects of movement within your history, within your life. You've lived in Toronto, you've lived in Vancouver, you lived in Sweden. Of course, you lived in Poland, and we're going to touch on that in a moment. But I think it's pretty clear, and tell me if I'm being accurate here, that you're not a sedentary person. You said, and I mentioned this as well, that you could kind of pack up your house in a couple of days and move to Poland. And if you came back and it didn't work and you were just humiliated because it didn't work, okay, so be it.
Yeah.
So are you a bit of a Bedouin?
I think so. I think that
Yeah.
I get that from my mother. She was like that. There's the story that she sold one of our apartments, I don't even know where, Sweden maybe, in the garage of the building, to a couple. And even when I was growing up, one of our pastimes was going to open houses in and around Toronto
No, really.
and just looking at people's houses and dreaming about moving. And we moved quite a few times as well. So from the time we got here to Canada. So I think that, yeah, I really like it. And this is the longest I've ever lived in a home for, like, other from in adulthood. Right now, I just crossed the 4-year mark in this place that I'm living now, and I'm already getting itchy to move and find something else.
Let me ask you about your character. Let's drill down deeply to your soul and your spirit.
So
How might you be different than others who they take great honor in? This was my childhood home. I grew up here. I've been living here for 40 years. My parents passed. I took it over. How might you be different than that?
I'm completely different than that.
I
I
know.
have a few things that of my parents, of course, that I will keep forever, but I just don't have that same attachment to, like, a house. That doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't, I might drive by a neighborhood and be like, I grew up here, but it just doesn't, I don't feel that. And I think maybe it's because from the day I was born, we were moving. We moved to different places. I don't remember moving to Canada, but at some point we moved to Canada, and then we lived in Thornhill, Ontario, and then we lived in North York, and so it was just this constant moving, and so I don't feel that same groundedness to one spot.
Right. So at some point in time, you and your husband decided that you were going to implement this feeling that you have, this sort of wherewithal of being a Bedouin, and you decided that you were going to move to Poland.
Yeah.
Right? So you packed everything up, just like the Beverly Hillbillies, and you moved you moved to Poland. Um, Give us a context of when that happened and what your thoughts were as to why you would do that.
So it sort of happened over a couple of years. It was 2009 in Vancouver, and my husband and I actually had never had a honeymoon.
Hmm.
And so we thought, let's go to Poland after like 10 years of marriage or something. And so we went to Poland for the first time together in 2011. And there was just this really cool buzz in Warsaw. The city was exciting, lots of things were happening. It sort of there were like tons of cafes and all this stuff, and got excited. And then we know,
Croissants. You love croissants.
yes, I do love croissants,
Yes,
but
you
those
do.
were not till later.
Okay.
But we went to, and I think, and Vancouver at the time, 2009. So we're having an economic crash. It's just a lot harder to live there. It's a great city, but it's a very expensive city. It didn't feed my soul. I may have been the catalyst for moving though. I may have told my husband I was going and he could come or not, but I was going. He came, but it took a little while because the other thing we wanted to do is if we went, we were going to go with Polish passports. His was easy because he had one. Mine was not so easy to get. I had the rights to my passport. They couldn't deny me a passport, but I had to write basically a whole autobiography of my family,
Mhm.
or biography, I guess, but like a whole list of my family of everywhere they had lived in Poland and why they had left.
Wow.
Which, yeah, it was quite like, and thank goodness for my dad who somehow remembered all the addresses. I don't know how he did that, but I had to write this whole big thing, and it took about a year and a half to get this.
Wow.
Yeah, and once we did that too, it was sell off everything and pack up everything, and all of that took a little while to do. But we finally landed in Poland in November 2013. So it was about a year and a half of, the spontaneous move was about a year and a half in the
Yeah,
making.
right, right. Like Bonnie Raitt said, yes, she was a superstar in the area of country and blues, and it was overnight, and it only took 24 years
Yeah, I mean,
or whatever. What would you say then, Caroline? What was the genesis of the idea to get you there? Why did you want to do it?
so Vancouver was hard. I thought part of my reasoning was very simple economics. The Canadian dollar stretches a lot further in Europe or in Poland because it's not on the euro. So 3 times. Poland is it's Central Europe. Like there's a city in Poland that is literally the center of Europe. So it's easy to get everywhere. Everybody speaks English. Even though we speak Polish, you want to be able to communicate, and people speak English quite well there. A lot of things are bilingual there. And I don't know, I was so burnt out. We're living and work. I had closed my Pilates studio because I had a Pilates studio for a number of years, it was great, but it was just a lot of work. I was looking for new footing. My husband was getting burnt out. He was working at EA Sports, making video games, and he was getting burnt out. And then he actually had been working in a financial company for a few years, and wasn't his passion either. And I thought, like, if we're ever going to do this, it's now. So let's just try it. And literally my thought was, what's the worst that can happen? We're a little bit embarrassed. We come home and have to move in with one of our parents for a few months until we find our footing. But okay, so fine. Then it's another story, and and family says, I told you so. Okay.
I think the beauty of your story and the book that you wrote is that you did it. Because, I mean, how many people do we know who dream? And they dream a lot, and they dream constantly, but they rarely implement their dreams. And here you said, you know what? Vancouver's not working for me. It's not working for my husband. Let's try something new. And of course, that's the Bedouin inside of you. So you get to Poland, and you see where you're going to live, and it's kind of from the communist era, dark. I asked a friend of mine, Dennis Klein, who worked in Poland for 12 years, what would you say the color is of Poland? What are the people like? He said he met some very fine people, some lovely people, but there's sort of a darkness to the country.
There is.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but then you go inside of your apartment where you're going to stay, and it's renovated and it's nice, right?
Yeah.
So tell us about your arrival there and the Polish people.
I mean, yeah, and the apartment with, of course, the person living there lives in New Jersey or somewhere, right?
Yeah, right.
Who owns the apartment, so they know. That first day, I'll never forget it because it was cold, and we had arrived with our little dog, and my cousin, he met us at the airport with his daughter, and we arrived on the 14th. The 11th is Independence Day, and that is the day when there are riots and the nationalists come out. And there's also, I don't know if it's reinstated yet, but there was a rainbow in the middle of one of the squares. And that was like, people just jokingly called it it was like Rainbow Burning Day. Yeah. Nice and light. And so the rainbow had been burned, and our street, the way the march goes, it would go right near the street where we were living on. There's a bridge. And when we pulled up, there were literally still police vans and police in full riot gear. And they were standing around smoking, whatever, but there was still a lot of police presence. Yeah, so it was this really weird, extra heavy feeling. I thought it was exciting though at the same time. I don't know what that says about me, but I thought it was kind of exciting too. But at the end, it's just another, Warsaw, at least it's just another city, and they have their people who are, on whatever spectrum of political beliefs, just like anywhere else. And so for me, it was just exciting to find this new place and where we could start our lives and figure out something new. And both of us could sort of recover from Vancouver a little bit and then start something new. And that was exciting. That's the part that I focus on.
But, I wonder to myself, as someone who has been, like all Jews, have been scarred by the Holocaust, when I hear about Israelis moving to Germany, yes, and there are many Israelis in Germany, and I hear about friends, as I mentioned, doing work in Poland, I think to myself, how does that work?
Yeah.
Do you land in Poland and think about Auschwitz? It's a dramatic thought. It's a dramatic question, but that's where my mind goes as a Jew.
So yes, you do. And actually, I had a bunch of people come up to me and, let's just say, reproachfully ask me why I would choose to move to Poland.
Yeah.
And they even asked my husband, and he would say, like, I'm not Jewish. And, and my husband even remembers Chernobyl in Poland. Like, he remembers the ash coming down. So it's not like his memories of Poland are so fantastic. He left when he was 12, and he remembers martial law in Poland.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing. So Auschwitz is in the south of Poland. It's near it's the town of Oświęcim. So like it's a few hours away. So you don't, and Warsaw is just a regular city. We were living right next to a library that had a plaque outside that said this is where the Nazis burned books. So you do see that they are doing that. And my grandparents, after they left Poland, they actually settled in Frankfurt. So I have more family in Frankfurt right now than I do in Poland.
Yes.
And you do feel it, and it is there. But there's also the Jewish Historic Institute, and the work that they are doing is admirable. And the work and there are people who are actively working to bring back that life and bring back and not have those memories erased. So the Nojik synagogue that I write about, the right around there, every September, there's this singer festival, Isaac Bashevis Singer Festival. And it's a big Jewish festival, and people of all sorts come out for that festival. And so I think it's not always gray in Poland. It's not just this heavy gray cloud the whole time. And I think that I think it's a shame if we, as the Jews, I guess, of the world, if they ignore these places. Because if they do, I think that's when that's when there's the possibility of all these things coming back and happening again. Like, I feel like part of my voice needs to be there too, for that not to happen. Because we see what's happening here in North America. That's probably a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
But, I participated in Pride there. So my husband, through his work had a big float. We went to Pride. And there were really angry people standing there in pseudo military attire and skinheads and fascists and whatever, standing around. But they were the minority at that point, standing around yelling and wanting all of us to die. And I was like, no, but see, we need to make the noise. We need to make the noise that we're here, that this happened. And I think that's the same. That's true for Germany. I think Germany right now is doing a better job than Poland, for sure. I've spent quite a bit of time in Munich, and Munich especially is really talking about it, and they're putting up more plaques, and any walking tour you want to do of Munich is going to be about the Third Reich. So they really are talking about it. They still need more, but there are voices doing the work. I have a friend who works for the Holocaust Museum in Berlin. And I know that they're constantly making themselves heard, making those voices heard. And I think that it does us a disservice to ignore that.
When you would meet an elderly Polish man or woman, did you think to yourself, where were you during the war?
So yes and no. It depended on who and where I was. The one thing in Warsaw is, because it's Warsaw, one of the things they do celebrate is the Warsaw uprising, August 1st. And so that's big, and that's not a Jewish specific thing. But a lot of people really, it's a controversial time because of course it didn't work. Yeah. But it's a thing they talk about. So there's a lot of people actually talking about where they were during the war and what they were doing. Like, those stories are around the Jewish stories aren't really around, that we need more of them, and they need to be not so centralized at the Poland Museum or the Jewish Historical Institute. They need to be throughout the city a little bit more. But those stories are there. And there's one story, and I don't even know if it made it into the book. I can't remember right now. But my husband came home to our apartment, and there was a woman standing outside with a flower, and she was looking for the people who had lived in our apartment before. And she was actually from Chicago, and she was Jewish, and she was part of the Warsaw Uprising. And so she told him her story, and he was quickly, frantically trying to call the father of the owner of our apartment, because he was in Warsaw, who came, and sadly the people she was looking for had passed away. But there were stories like that all the time, of people still finding places, and I know that story really shook my husband, that moment, hearing that.
Your perspective as this interview carries on, and after reading the book, it's unique, and I think you're right. I think it's really important, because if you don't go there, then there's a lot of stereotypical views that we can have of Poland, Eastern Europe, or even Western Europe. But you were there, and you excuse me, you knew the language, so that's a huge deal. And I think you alluded to this in the book, is like language is everything when you move to a new place. And it's very true, because I struggled with my Hebrew when I first came to Israel. Once I was more fluent, I felt much more grounded in the country. So I want to ask you a few Polish words, okay?
Okay, great.
What does piękny mean? Piekny.
Piekny. Piękny, beautiful.
Yes, very good. You have 1 for 1.
Okay, oh, is this a test? Great.
Dude, yes, it is a test. I like to make my podcast fun and serious. We'll get there shortly.
Right.
Duchy, D-U-Z-Y.
Duży, big.
Big. Okay, here's a hard one, and I can't even say it. Niezależności, N-I-E-Z.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll start again. Niezależnose.
Niezależność.
Right.
Like not being dependent.
Right. Independent.
Oh,
good. So you know the tough ones as well. Last one. Zimny, Z-I-M-N-Y.
Zimny, cold.
Yes. Yeah. I'm assuming when you were there, your Polish got better and better and better.
A lot. I have that home Polish where you throw in like a English word every now and then, and it did get a lot better. And I kind of picked up I think the biggest thing was I picked up there's that tempo there, each language has its own rhythm. And then that was the biggest thing, that I was able to pick that up. So it would take people a minute longer to figure out that I wasn't from there.
Well, I'm assuming as your vocabulary grew, that your accent probably got stronger as well.
I guess.
I notice with a lot of Jews who go to Israel that they have a tendency of, for instance, rolling their R after a little while.
Right.
And it can be cool, or it can be a little annoying, but it seems to happen, no?
Although this is funny, because one of the things my husband said is that my sound and R sounds are harder than his. And I don't speak Hebrew, but I did learn it when I was in kindergarten. I don't remember anything, but just naturally, I have much harder ones than they do in Poland.
So you were in Poland, and you had a few goals in terms of what you wanted to accomplish there. One of which was understanding your family better, your history, seeing it up front, and of course that was done through establishing yourself within the country. And of course, that meant traveling. What was rural, or what is rural Poland like versus the cities?
So, I mean, it's changing, but you can still see the old hand carved wagons where they'll have wood in them. So it's not like a wagon, like a square, but it's like a trough almost.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, that is still around. And then especially when you go to some of the other places outside, like the all the people in the mountains, the Gurale, they have their own language. Not unlike like Quebecois here, where it's a little bit different than French. So you'll go to these places and it's completely different. And of course, English dies down a little bit in the more rural places, but it's quite beautiful around the if you go sort of up to Stetno north. A lot of these places were German, so you actually have a very strong German influence in some places. Not Stetno exactly, but it really does. You sort of start to see those old brick houses. There's this one area near where my uncle has a home, and you turn into this big long driveway, and there's like I think the world's biggest cross is there when you go in, and it becomes
how big is it?
It's huge. I don't know, but it is. I hope it's still there. My sister's going, and I'm going to check with her because that thing was huge. You could see it from the road. You knew where to turn in, and then you see a lot of these like by the side of the road, you start seeing a lot of the little chapels, and I guess people put them up for different things, to go for prayers or whatever there. But they have a lot of those too. So you start to see a lot of that when you drive in the country. And not unlike other European cities, or countries, it's really funny because you'll see you see this plaque, this rectangular plaque with an outline of a city. And when you're entering the city, which may be 2 houses, you suddenly have to slow down really fast. And then you leave a half a second later, and there's this cross, like it's crossed out, and you can speed up again. So you see that. And then one of the coolest thing is you see stork's nests. And the stork's nests are people build them for the storks.
Really?
And it's lucky if you see them, but it's like it's a thing. And I was really surprised the first time I saw it, but they dot the landscape, these very tall structures with a nest on top.
Why do people have to build them? Why don't the storks build them?
I don't know if they can, but it's because they're quite tall, they're quite high.
Yes.
So it's like a wooden structure, and I maybe the stork builds the nest up there, but Poland's very flat. So in these places, when you go north, it's I think it's, my father-in-law says this, I'm going to blame it on him. I can't confirm this, but it's the only country where the mountains are south and the sea is north. And as you go north, it gets very flat.
I really enjoy the nuances that you find in countries. As an example, to be Canadian knows that we cherish the maple tree, as an example, right?
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful to be able to see those nuances. In Israel, as I said, I mentioned that I spent a lot of time there. Wherever you walk, especially outside of the cities, you'll see history.
Yes.
And you'll think to yourself, my gosh, Moses walked. Well, Moses didn't come into Israel, but Joshua walked there. Or if you're Christian, you'll say, this is where Jesus was born. It's fascinating to be able to do that within a country, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And Poland sort of has a lot of that too. Because so much of the country was razed during World War II. There's a place in Gdańsk, and that's where a lot of the amber is. It's right near the Baltic. And
that's where the shipping yard is, Lekwa.
Yeah. And so they have this one street, and I just called it Amber Alley because it was just like amber stores, one after the other. But all the buildings were rebuilt, but the steps were original. And I don't know, I thought that was really special because who knows how old those steps were. And so there's quite a bit of that. And there are, of course, some old places, like there are some castles that made it through. Malbork, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's an old Teutonic Knights castle. Yes. And so, I hope I got that right. And so there is history like that as well. And of course, just because it's Europe, it's not unusual that half the houses are over 100 years old.
Right. But then you added within your book, when you went there, you talked about the pastels or the colors of the homes.
Yeah.
Very beautiful, right?
Warsaw is, you walk down the street and it's pink, blue, yellow, nice gray. Like they really make that effort. It really does brighten a city visually.
I really base a lot of my travel and its success on food. And I do because I've become a foodie. I grew up with Ashkenazi food, which was cholent and kugel, and kind of my mom was a good cook, but there's a blandness to that food, and it gets very rote after a while. But eventually, I started a restaurant, a food show, with my friend Marty Gallen, who just passed away, and we became ensconced in food, in the greatest chefs in Toronto and Canada. Now, what fascinated me is that you are self-described. You are not a foodie.
I'm not.
You're not a foodie, and I'm wondering how much of that has to do with your background. And then, boom, you go to Poland, and you're exposed to some really fine taste. Like Poland is all about fusion, of different cuisines. Here's a few. Here's a mention of a few foods in Poland. Pierogies, of course, right? Dumplings.
Pierogi. I'm going to correct that.
Pierogi.
Pierogi. Correct.
Yeah, correct me. Bigos or bijos, Bigos, a hearty stew.
Yeah, bigos.
Like, do you make any of these?
Yeah, actually, we that bigos was my dad's specialty. When it's done correctly, it takes a week to make.
Oh,
yeah, because you like heat it up and freeze it, and it's a winter one, so you have to put it technically outside so it freezes, and it's just a whole big process. But my sister makes a great one now, and my husband's tried his hand at it too recently, and so we're all working on it. Yeah,
your bijos. Will you have me over?
Absolutely.
Thank you. So let me just describe this. It's a hearty stew made with sauerkraut, cabbage, various meats like pork or sausage, mushrooms, and sometimes prunes, often called hunter's stew.
Yeah.
You knew that? Hunter's stew. Here's another one. Zurek, Zurek, a sour rye soup.
Zurek.
There we go.
Zurek. And Zurek is actually really good. It's not, the descriptions don't sound good, but Zurek, I really like Zurek. I think it's really good. It definitely has that sour flavor, and it's just a refreshing soup.
There you go. A sour rye soup with fermented rye flour, served with sausage, potatoes, and sometimes a boiled egg, often in a bread bowl. Meat is huge in Poland, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very meat-eating country.
A lot.
Yeah.
So tell us about some of your interesting finds in Poland. As per food.
Okay, best Indian food I had was in Poland.
Oh, really? Indian food.
Yeah. It's a foodie country. I'll say that. And the nice thing about it too is just dollar for dollar, it's a lot cheaper than here. So you can really afford to eat out in very fancy places. But yeah, really the culinary scene there is fantastic, and people have a lot of fun with it. There are a lot of names of restaurants that just don't translate but they have very clever play on words. And there's this one place that was fantastic called Mąka I Woda, which is basically flour and water, but it was an Italian place, and they made all their pizzas there. So but you cannot walk down the street without a restaurant popping up within like 5 feet of walking down the street. They have these things called bar mleczny, which is a milk bar, and these things are from way back. My dad would tell me about them, and it was the place where if you only had like $1 or $2, you could go and get a meal there. And they're very like homemade foods there. But they have a thing in Poland called a drugie śniadanie, which is like a second breakfast. Mm-hmm. Don't ask. And it's like they have breakfast, and then they'll have like maybe around, 10 a.m. or so, they have this like second breakfast. And it usually consists of something sweet, like a sweet bun or something. And they have these like more breaks in the day. We have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and they have like, the first breakfast, second breakfast, lunch, and then like an evening, and then like dinner, and then like an evening snack even. So it's just really incorporated into the culture. And yes, a lot of sauerkraut. Surówka, like literally, I am not kidding when I say that the Indian food came with a side of surówka, which I don't know why it needed it, but it did.
Did you get to know your grandparents more specifically through food at all? Was that something that you studied?
Um, Not my dad's parents. So, no, I'm lying. So yes, maybe. My mom's parents, we grew up with them, but my grandmother did make some meals that were just very specific, and her way of making them. And so, yes, in that way, that was I have plenty of memories like that. Although some of them were also just funny because what they lived in Germany, and there was this like lemon loaf that my grandfather would eat. And I
Yeah.
remember the first time I saw it in Poland, it was just this like overwhelming emotional moment seeing this loaf.
Does it have
We,
chocolate on it?
yeah,
Chocolate.
it's like covered in a thin layer of chocolate, and inside is lemon. And it exists. I found it.
You got very excited about that in your
I
book.
did. I know, because it was
I
just this
know.
emotional moment for me. Because it
Yeah.
was what he always ate for breakfast, and we weren't allowed to have it. And we had another moment. So there's a thing called a nalewka, which is made with spiritus, which is that like 98% proof. You can't get it in Canada. I think you can get it in Montreal, but you can't get it in Canada. And it's moonshine, right? Like it's their version of it, and they make it usually on a base of either some fruit. Uh, and my uncle had one that was made on a base of honey and cinnamon. So it
Mm.
had like it wasn't as, sorry, it was sweet, but not as sort of fruit sweet. And when he invited us over and he was like, I am passing down this recipe to you, and really more specifically to my husband, but I'm passing this down to you. I want you to have this recipe. And I actually found a few weeks ago, I found the voice recording of him passing down this recipe to us to make this drink. And
Is that a big deal when someone passes a recipe to
I
you?
think it was. I think it was a huge deal. I hadn't really thought of it that way, but when it was happening, we were both like, "Oh, I guess
Yeah.
we're the keepers of this recipe." And nalewka is one of those things. When you walk in to someone's house, you're going to hear about how they make their nalewka. Like you're not spared that. We were buying nalewka before we left Poland on the early visits. And we walked into a store. We were like, okay, we get it. This isn't homemade, but we can't really bring that on a plane. So we're going to buy this nalewka. And the gentleman at the liquor store was so excited that he opened 3 bottles,
Really?
and he started drinking with us. And at one point I had to like whisper to my husband, I had to be like, you have to stop this, because I'm going to be under that table in a minute. Like, this stuff's strong.
So Caroline, I want within that light, how much of drinking, of spirits, of beer, of vodka, is part of your history, their history?
Too much too much. It is, I don't know a single Polish household that doesn't have a bottle of vodka in the freezer. I don't even drink very much, and I have a bottle of vodka in the freezer. And yeah, it's a big part of it. When we first moved there, we would visit either my maternal uncle or my husband's uncle, and we knew like this was like we would prepare for days. And my husband's uncle would drink this really cheap, awful vodka. Like it just burns going down. And I remember going out, I was like, I can't, like, I literally cannot do this.
Yes.
I think I killed a lot of plants too, just spilling it
Putting
out.
it in the garden. Yes.
But I had to go to the store and say, I need a vodka that doesn't taste like vodka. And the gentleman behind the counter laughed because he knew exactly what I was talking about to bring it to him. So I would say alcohol is too much, and it is unfortunate because you do see there's a lot of functional alcoholism there, and you have liquor stores that are open 24/7 overnight. And it saved me once when I realized at 8 o'clock in the morning I hadn't bought a bottle for my grandmother when I was going to visit her, but it's maybe a little too excessive, I would say.
Poland has really advanced over the last 60, 70, 80 years. The economic growth there is quite substantial. Multicultural urban centers, of which we talked about, also growing dramatically. Everybody says it visits Poland. You said it in your book that there's just beautiful historic architecture, modern skyscrapers, and very diverse population, tech and startup ecosystems, globalized education, vibrant arts and the music scene, and of course culinary fusion, as we spoke about. Sounds like Poland is moving forwards, but you left. Why did you leave?
So it is moving forward, but it's still very much behind in a lot of things too. So yes, technology, I was spending $10 Canadian on my cell phone every month, which was great. Miss that. All the things that there's like, you want to pay, there's an app, you just push a button and the money goes. And so a lot of things that we don't have here. But there is still this mentality there that is hard. I went back for a quick visit in 2019, just before the world shut down for COVID. And, I was standing on a corner and there were men that were complaining because Poland never did the reparation thing after the war. But people are coming forward and saying, this was my property and all this. And there are big protests right now, or there were when I was there. And I was standing at the street corner and there were a bunch of men behind me with these Polish flags. And I always knew if you're carrying a Polish flag, we're probably not on the same side. If you're carrying a Euro flag, probably good. And they were just standing there and they were talking about, like, I don't know how much we can swear on this, but they were just cursing out the Jews. And I was standing there going, do I turn around? Do I say something? Do I not say something? Am I understanding correctly what they're saying? And so that's still around. I know that in the circle of friends, of people that I knew, only Jewish person. And I know some people were really shocked, and that it made it harder. When I went back now, that hasn't changed so much too. There's just this, people just don't know. 1968, people don't know what happened in 1968. And that like 25,000 Jews left. So there's still that. And then right after we got there, actually, their version of the Trump government was elected. They're not in power now, but a couple of weeks ago, they just reelected, the country reelected the president, and he's against immigration. All the immigrants it's all their fault, right? That mentality. And so it's a country that still needs to figure that out, I think. So that wasn't always easy. And because he grew up there, I think my husband was having a harder time with it. I was going to protest like every weekend, but my husband was having a harder time with it emotionally. And then he got his dream job offered back in Canada. So it was sort of a no-brainer for him. He was coming back whether I liked it or not. So it's not perfect. I was there 4 weeks ago now. And it wasn't, there are still issues that I think that need to be solved. And then I come back to Canada and I'm seeing the same thing here. So,
yeah. So you're Jewish, you have Catholic roots, you're Canadian. Are you Polish too?
Of course. Yeah. Just not the same way that the people who live there are.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You've written a book and you did a magnificent job. We're going to talk about in a few minutes where people can buy your book. I like to ask authors some really sort of drill down questions about writing, because it's not an easy thing to do to write a book, not at all. And we alluded to that before. One of the things I asked in my writers club, I asked the participants, what word might you use when you're writing instead of said? SAID. Give me three options.
So I actually don't use that much dialogue. What I do is I use, it's not just one word, but I use because I write creative nonfiction. So it's not fiction. So it will be a little bit different, yes. But I'll use in his own words. So I like to give the voice to people. I have recordings of my dad that I include in this book. I'm including it in the next book that I'm working on in his own words. And then I step back and they do it. Okay. Or instead of that, I would say the other way that I look at it is I will frame it around a question. So I'll ask a question and then I'll just have my father answer, and then that way.
Yes.
Or with a reaction. If this was fiction, I would say also with a reaction. So instead of just saying, they can spit out the word, they can laugh, and then I would try to do that. So you're also giving an action, so it doesn't stay as a stagnant he said, she said.
So much thought. What words might you replace for instead of look? LOOK.
Seize. Again, so this is where I would go to my film background,
Yes.
my screenwriting background, and I'm really big on describing a location. So instead of I would use it as a feeling rather than like I would take another sense and describe it through another sense.
Oh, as an example.
So instead of saying like, look, there's a storm coming, I would say something like she could feel the cold wind on her skin, or something, and give it a more descriptive action than just like a.
You love writing? You love writing?
I do love writing.
So Brian Prowski, who's in my writers club, he said what he loves about writing is finding a really pretty sentence. What is it about writing that you love?
That's pretty. I like working out my questions.
Mm-hmm. What does that mean?
So I have a lot of questions about a lot of things, and a lot of things that interest me, and I think that I like to work them out on the page.
Were you a curious little girl?
I think so. I got my first writing rejection when I was 8.
Did you? Well, who rejected it and what was it about?
Owl magazine rejected my book.
Bastards.
I know. I have a lot of people boycotting them now. Kidding. Yeah, I think I always did. I always tried new things. I remember even when I was young, when we were living in Thornhill and I was little, and my parents would always make me go to summer camp. Like I hated camp. I was not a camp person. But I remember the one camp that I loved, and it was like on weekends, and we would go and try people's jobs. So
Really?
we went and made donuts, and then we went and like worked with the firemen one day, and that was the part that I liked the most, is like trying these different things.
You know, you have a very lovely character. You really do.
Thank you.
Really, like I could see you being a character in a kid's book about someone who just is in so much awe of the world in which we live. And I really respect that a lot. You know, when we talk about traveling and meeting other people, hence, you know, broadening our horizons and making the world more of one, you know, where we understand other nationalities, other human beings. Some of the things that are important when you travel, and I just want your response to this, is to travel with purpose. In other words, visit different countries or regions, staying with locals through homestays, or cultural exchange programs. Learn the language. We talked about that. The best way to be in another country, to know the people, to understand the culture, is by understanding the language, because language is culture and culture is language. Engage in cultural events. Like I love the fact that you went out to protests. If you were my daughter, I don't know how happy I'd be about that, but good for you for raising your voice. Read and listen to global stories and connect with diverse communities. Does this all resonate with you?
Oh, 100%. I like to say my mom was the first Airbnb-er. She did it before. Like we would land in a place and we would spend, it was kind of annoying at the time, but we would spend like a day with the local real estate agent finding a place where we could stay. So we never stayed in hotels. We stayed in apartments that we rented out. And we shopped at the local store with the local people. And yes, we did some touristy things, but we always just tried to integrate. There was never, the way I grew up, there was never an us versus them feeling. My mother spoke 7 languages. My dad spoke about 5, and they taught us that instant communication. Don't walk in and think you're better. Don't walk in and try to change it. Just sort of see what they're doing and go along with what they're doing there, you know, given place. And so that was a really big part of how I grew up. You know, I talk about this. My dad would go out in the mornings and sit at the local Filipino shop where I lived, at Bathurst and Shepherd, and he would go and he'd come home with the foods that okay, they kind of freaked us out sometimes. But there was that idea at our, you can't say you don't like it until you've tried it.
Right.
That's the big thing. And so that's what it was. My husband and I just went to Marseille for a little vacation. We just got back a week ago, and I had never been. And we went because we had never been. There was no other reason other than, oh, look, it's a place. It's a place we've read about. It's a place we were interested in. Let's just go and figure it out.
So do you see demarcation lines in the world?
I
Do
mean,
you see the divisions, or do you do your best to look past it?
I mean, of course I see them. They're there. You can't not see them, but I think that they're unfortunate a lot of the time. And I think that, I mean, I try. I am obviously not perfect. There are things I like more or less about different cultures, and I think that that's fair. But I try not to walk in and say that I'm better.
What do you like about Canadian culture?
I like that we don't really have a culture in that way, that it's so different and that it's just so, there are always exceptions, but generally that it's so open, that I'm hoping it's easy. I grew up in an immigrant household. I grew up with parents who didn't speak English perfectly. It was like a third, fourth, fifth language. I grew up with accents, and that part was very, that part was sort of just accepted. And even my high school that I went to was there were people from all over, because it was a French school.
Yes.
And we would have these days where everybody would bring foods from their countries. And so there was that feeling that was secondary. We were there together first. And there was I don't even know if this is in the book, but there was a tribe that came from Somalia when I was in high school. And I remember we were organizing our prom, and they were like, "Oh, that's your thing." And we were like, "No, you're here. This is your thing too now." And they came, and it was great because we could all go together. And yeah, we had differences, obviously, but we could all sort of party together. And I think that that's ideally how I'd like to see it.
So being that the world is so incredibly vast and diverse for you, and yet kind of small because you're open to the idea that nobody's better than anybody else, are you where you're supposed to be at today?
This minute, probably, but that can change.
Are you satisfied with where you're at?
Right now it's good. There's so many more things I want to do, in general, and I have my own dreams and things that I still want to do, but right now I've restarted again working with students in an underground school in Afghanistan and helping them get their voices out. And I think that doing that is very satisfactory for me too. And so,
good for you.
Yeah. So I right now, yes.
Well, you're unusual, in our culture. Was it hard for you to find a good man?
You know what? No, because I knew we met when we were quite young, and we did not start dating back then. We started dating later, but I knew him for a long time, and we just sort of, I think we grew up together.
You've known him forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you have a lovely personality. Just lovely. I have I've been working with AI over the last few months, and I asked AI to write a poem about my guest. So I have an ode to Caroline Topperman.
Oh, wow. Okay.
You ready?
Yeah.
In Poland's embrace, you carved a new home, chasing roots where shadows freely roam. Caroline Topperman, with courage and grace, you wove through time your family's trace. Old letters, whispered in ink, faded thin, your grandfather's tale, where to begin? In Polish scrawl, his words came alive, fleeing the Nazis, his will to survive. A Jewish heart racing through the night, one step ahead in the war's cruel fight. Yet loss lingered close, a sorrow profound for those erased where no mercy was found. Across the weave, your grandmother's thread, Catholic and bold, where few women tread. In Afghan markets, her spirit stood tall, First to break customs, she answered the call. From Kabul's dust to Jalalabad's way, her strength built paths that endured to this day. Two legacies clash yet blend in your soul, a tapestry rich, making fragments whole. Your roots cast a shadow, your story unfolds, of history's weight and truth it holds. Jewish and Catholic, a dual heritage shines. In your family's past, your own heart entwines. Caroline, your pen bridges then and now. Through love and loss, you've honored their vow, a journey, an adventure, a rabbit hole deep. Your words keep their shadows, their secrets to keep.
Oh, oh, that's very nice.
Did you like that?
Yeah, I did. That's really
Yeah, I get a lot of mixed reviews on AI poems.
yeah, of course, and that's a whole other
It's
podcast.
AI, right?
But that's
Caroline, as we did at the top of the show, talked about what one can take out of this. My thoughts are very similar as to what I mentioned then, and which is that you're a very curious person, but not only are you curious, the formula I think within your soul is be curious and then go out and create an adventure, and learn and look and grow and meet people, taste the foods, have
yes,
another pierogi. And I think that's a wonderful message for people to hear and to incorporate into their psyche. Be adventuresome.
yeah,
See those back roads, in rural Poland. Take a look at the biggest cross in the world and wonder about it. Who built this? Where
right,
did it come from? Right?
yeah.
I love your curiosity. I love your adventuresome spirit. And I just wonder if you want to comment on that at all.
It's how I grew up, right? My dad. I have that Polish Farsi dictionary that my grandfather made,
Yeah.
and I'm dying to use it somewhere, somehow, and figure out Farsi through this dictionary. And I think that that's it's what our walls growing up were decorated with pieces from all over the world. It wasn't just one. I didn't grow up in a household that looked one way. It had pieces from all over, from all the travels and all the places my parents had been and their families had been. So there was a lot, and I think that that's the only way we can even try to understand. We don't have to agree. I'm not even going there, but to try to understand each other is just by being curious about each other.
Are we going to be okay, humankind?
You're not the first person that has asked me that. I feel like I should
I'm assuming that would be the case. Yeah.
I hope so. You know what? I think so, and only because I think this is sort of normal. What we're going through now, we're going back to a normal. What we've
In other
had,
words, life is cyclical. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's it is like that. And the next generation will, not like what we're going through, and so.
So in conclusion, I've had this idea for many years. It's sort of a breaking bread idea with the other, or what we assume to be the other. And this is just a nice place to drop it in. How do you do that? How do you break bread with others? And here's some ideas. So let's say I would find a population of Palestinians downtown. And I would say to them, let's come together and let's have a meal together, because meals, food, as we mentioned, there's a lot in eating together, right? You don't
Yeah.
want to drop the spaghetti, but yet he dropped the spaghetti. We can laugh together. All of a sudden, there's a union there. Some of the things is find a neutral ground.
Yeah.
Okay. So don't do it in a Jewish area, and don't do it in a Palestinian area downtown. Do it in an area that makes sense, neutral. A shared meal. Prepare foods from both cultures. Have an open mindset. Excuse me. Go in there. As you said before, you said it really, really well. Your parents taught you is, hey, you're not better than anybody else, right? Your mom knew 7 languages, your dad knew 5 languages. I gave them the ability to have a real open mind, because you could hear about other people's lives and their culture. Be respectful communication. Establish ground rules for a respectful dialogue. And finally, small gestures go a long way. Offer a small act of kindness, like sharing a personal story or a sincere compliment, to build trust and ease the hostility. And I would add too that gifts go a long way, don't they? Are you a gift giver?
Yeah. Yes, I am. I like giving. I like shopping for other people and giving gifts.
Yeah, I do
Definitely.
too. What's the most recent gift you gave?
Um. Oh, money. Well, two actually. So one was I knew well, we came back from Poland. My sister was taking her kids there actually to show them where she's from.
Hmm.
That was their first trip. Kids are young. And so we decided that we weren't going to give the kids anything like anything material really, but we gave them money, like Polish zloty, so they could go and like find what they wanted. Which they were thrilled because they had, the local, it was like
Gosh.
local money, it was like a thing. And then while we were away, we had some neighborhood kids um, uh, watering our yard. And so we found some little things in Berlin for them to discover that we left out for them so they
What
could
were the little things?
so it was just like we bought them a compass, like a really, really cool compass, so that, the world where we were. And then the other one, mainly because I don't know if that mother's ever going to talk to me again, but a harmonica, because it was like this really cool vintage harmonica. So
Yeah, yeah. You don't buy a harmonica or a bassoon,
sorry to the mother, but kid was thrilled.
Gift giving is a beautiful thing, and I love really going out there and shopping. And if I'll see something that I can identify with another person, someone I know, I'll go, oh
That's
man, I'm going to pick that up. And you know what? People take the gift and they love it for what it is. Like the compass is very cool, but it's more than that. It's like, wow, you were thinking about me,
yeah.
and it's lovely.
Well, my mentor, when we were on that trip, I found a rolling pin with a Polish design. And this is like things that she's crazy about. So, of course, I think she's the only person adult that we brought something back
Yeah,
for.
good for you.
Yeah.
I want to become friends with you, so you buy me a gift.
Yes. Okay.
I'll buy you one too.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching and for listening. I really, truly enjoyed this interview so much with Caroline Topperman. Caroline, you did a great job. Thank you so much for being my guest.
It was a lot of fun.
Man, it was a lot of fun. And I suggest really strongly that you pick up her book. Where can people buy it, Caroline?
Wherever books are sold. So, yeah.
Amazon.
Indigo, anywhere, small bookstores.
Yeah. And as you say in Hebrew, kol hakavod to you for writing a book. It's not an easy thing to do. Sei gesund, as we say in Yiddish. Until we meet again, please watch the show and share it. Thank you so much.